The prairie chicken is listed federally and by the state as an endangered species. That means it's critically in danger of becoming extinct in the near future. Attwater's prairie chicken is a grouse, a group of birds that are native to North America. It's the southernmost member of that grouse family. More specifically, it's a subspecies of the extinct heath hen, a bird that once occurred all along the eastern seaboard. It and the greater prairie chicken are the sole surviving subspecies of that heath hen. Right now, we're on the Attwater Prairie Chicken National Wildlife Refuge. This is an 8,000-acre block of land that was set aside in Colorado County back in 1972 for the preservation of an endangered species, the Attwater's prairie chicken. Originally, Attwater's prairie chicken ranged through all the coastal prairie of Louisiana and Texas, from as far east as Bayou Teche in Louisiana to about Corpus Christi here in the state of Texas. It's estimated that around the turn of the century there were over 1 million birds in this habitat. It's hard to say for sure how much is left, but estimates vary from 20% to 5% of the original native prairie is left. Most of it has been converted to farmlands for agricultural crops like rice, cotton, milo, and other areas have been taken over by sprawling concrete areas such as Houston.
At dawn and at dusk, in early spring, the prairie chickens begin their annual performance of an ancient ritual.
The males gather on a short grass area, usually slightly elevated, and they begin what's called a booming activity. They inflate bright orange sacs on the sides of their neck, and they lean forward, erecting feathers over their heads and fanning their tail. And they begin to emit air from those sacs, making a low booming noise like blowing over the open mouth of a Coke bottle. And they will alternately boom like that and stomp their feet rapidly. And they look very much like a Plains Indian doing some kind of Indian dance, stamping their feet, leaning over with these feathers erected over their heads. And it's thought that indeed the Plains Indians may have got some of their dance routines from watching prairie chickens. Occasionally, two males will square off one-on-one, and they'll actually cackle at one another and jump up in the air and fight, but generally no blood is shed during these bouts, and it's more bluff and bravado than actual combat. Now, the hens come in from the side of the booming ground, and they're a lot quieter and more subdued than the males are. And when a female enters that booming ground, all the males increase their booming activity. They just go crazy trying to attract this hen to their part of the lek. And generally, she'll find her way to the dominant male, and when she does, he'll often have to fight off 2 or 3 intruders who would like to have his place on the booming ground, and then he will breed the female, and she'll leave. And that'll be the total sum of her visit to the lek. And then she'll go off into the denser grass and find a nice site for a nest, and she alone will build the nest, lay the eggs, and incubate those eggs.
Habitat conversion destroyed most of the coastal prairie. The few tracts left face another dilemma: brush incursion by McCartney Rose. Originally from India, McCartney Rose may have been brought to Texas for their pretty white flowers. The rest of the plant, however, is a tangled mass of thorny vines. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are teaming up with private landowners to repulse this invasion.
Presently, we're involved in what's known as a Section 6 project, in which the federal agency, through virtue of the Section 6 of the Endangered Species Act, is able to give funds on a cost-sharing basis to the state. And the state applies those funds to habitat management. Well, we have an adjacent neighbor who's had a real problem with brush encroachment that has affected his cattle program as well as prairie chicken habitat. And so the state is going in and have entered into an agreement with him to control his brush encroachment, in return for which they will get 3 years of management rights on his cattle herds and hopefully will bring his habitat back to a level that's not only usable by prairie chickens, but will benefit his ranching operation as well.
Ranching interests and prairie chickens are not mutually exclusive. In fact, moderate grazing pressure, which used to be provided by buffaloes, is necessary to keep the prairie in a suitable condition for the Attwater's prairie chicken. Maintaining this balance may save this seriously endangered bird from extinction.
Well, I guess the really intrinsic value of any species is that it represents the diversity of life on Earth. And Attwater's prairie chicken is one of those very colorful and characteristic segments of life on Earth that represents the original prairie that was here when our settling forefathers came to Texas. It would be a shame to lose that cultural piece of Texas. And even more than that, you have to consider that it is a barometer, an indicator of the health of the prairie. When you lose all the prairie chickens, you know that it's going to be the bobwhite quail next, and then the mourning dove, and on down the line. So there are several reasons that we can look at why we should care about the prairie chicken and why we should try to save it.